Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Landry. I'm one of the vice presidents here at QuickStart. And do me the favor of letting me introduce Lana Rich to you. Lana Rich is a very seasoned cyber and talent expert. She's a member of our cyber advisory council here and our resident SME for anything and everything cyber. And Lana's going to be walking us through a presentation today on a newer way to approach staff development, building cyber resilience and whatnot. And so Lana, thank you very much for helping us out today, and I will hand this over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon if you're on the East Coast. Again, my name is Lana. I am super excited to be here and talking about cyber ranges. Really impressed with the Quick Starts team and them rolling this out now that it's needed more than ever. So really excited to share this with you. Not everyone knows about cyber ranges. Most of the CISOs I speak with aren't always privy to cyber ranges, so it's excited to dive into this and get your teams in a better position moving forward. Just as Ryan said, a little bit about my background. So I have 15 years in tech. A lot of that has to do with staffing and then most of that is with cybersecurity. So that's my background. And I'm happy to answer any questions at the end if you have any questions about all of this new content. All right, so this is kind of go through what we're going to be talking about here. There's a lot of what is it solving, kind of framing all of that for your team and helping you understand what choices you're going to make. So first I want to start off with the history. I remember back in the early days when certifications were everything. There was a CCIE that cost about 10 grand in like 2005 to get, and that was the upper echelons of greatness when it came to certifications. And that was it. It kind of all that investment lived in people's heads. It wasn't across the team, and it wasn't proven. So there was a heavy, heavy reliance on certifications. Now, certifications in a lot of ways are great. They really provide a baseline, they provide a foundation. What we started to see, though, is that we weren't actually solving the problem of are we ready? Like that question still stood up, and we couldn't really say we're ready. We knew we had the knowledge, we didn't know if we had the execution. So there was a discrepancy between the certifications and the readiness. And that's something that hasn't been solved until very recently with cyber ranges, in my opinion, other than the very hard route, which means you get breached and you just learn when it's not the best time to be learning. So that's where historically we've been. A lot of certs, a lot of letters, especially in cyber. I have never seen an industry rely more on certifications outside of cyber, and still we had gaps. So that's where we were up to date. The issue with certifications versus readiness continues on a team level. So we had minimal hands-on experience and almost no team-based practice. So when we got to real incidents and there were cross-functional needs, we had no idea what to do. And this is simple things like we don't know how to contact people. We don't understand our own playbook. All those things were probably in place, but still not ready because it hadn't been practiced. At the same time, we were also dealing with the world and AI and these attacks getting more aggressive, more sophisticated every day. And we were relying on maybe content that was updated once a year, and the world was changing once a month. So that became a real stagnation in terms of, okay, great, we got the certification, but that doesn't necessarily reflect on our readiness. There's also a lot of compliance pressure, and certs help with that, but compliance and readiness aren't the same thing. Like compliance is a great benchmark to start our cybersecurity journey, to start protecting our customers, to start protecting our end users, but it's not the end all. We really have to have some action around that compliance to make sure we're ready. And certs were great, but when it came to a tabletop exercise or an incident response plan, it wasn't there and we weren't ready for it. Um, and yeah, and then in short, we got the certs, it built the industry, but it just wasn't preparing us for an actual breach or actual incidents, even if they aren't breaches. How are we triaging false positives? It wasn't, we weren't ready for that. So that's where cyber ranges come in. I think it could have been very easy to say, hey, let's implement cyber ranges for an individual to learn in, kind of like a sandbox, kind of like a lab, like let someone play around with it. But it became really obvious that cybersecurity was a team sport. And this is what cyber ranges is really solving for. Um, there's a lot of metaphors out there to try and explain what it's like in a cyber range, but flight simulators tend to be, the one that kind of comes up the most. You're in, a space. You can see what's on the screen, and you're responding with your fellow teammates. Like that's probably the best metaphor for it. Um, Basically what it is in cyber speak is you can set up an environment probably pretty close to what your current environment is and pick an event that you want to happen. It could be a DDoS attack. And then see how your team responds. Do they follow your playbook? Do they not follow your playbook? What happens? How does communication happen? And it's very similar in that way to kind of like a simulator. So basically, we take something that could be very threatening, very scary, and we put it in a safe environment. And it's all real world stuff, right? Like I think that I know there's a lot of fear-based language in cybersecurity, but it truly is not a win situation. It's not when are you going to be breached, or it's not a if, it's a when. So being able to handle these, even the smallest ones in a real world situation, is just very critical now to pretty much every environment. Um, and then, once a real situation hits, you have the muscle memory. We have the experience. We have the communication down. So we're able to really respond appropriately, more calmly, and follow the plan that's probably been improved based on our cyber range exercises. So, yes, continuing on, very hands-on and very realistic. So, you can be going in, making adjustments on the back end, really triaging these alerts as they come in. It could be a phishing email to a full-scale breach. It's very adaptable in terms of what you want your team to practice. It's also very adaptable in terms of where is your team right now, right? You could be using cyber ranges for a tabletop exercise. So does your team know how to follow the IR playbook? Does your team know how to uh, appropriately escalate things? Or it could be used for upskilling, which is pretty much my favorite thing about this product, because there's just so much barriers for cybersecurity and getting into cyber, as well as so many barriers for hiring more cyber. So upskilling is a solution that really works for most IT leaders, most cyber leaders. So this is a great way to, get your sysadmin, get your, help desk person into a simulation and help them upskill to be part of your cyber team. So it could be, again, a full scale breach, or it could be phishing emails. Depends on what you need. And it depends on what you're going for. I probably wouldn't start the sysadmin off on a full scale breach. It might not work out for them, but they can work up to that. So outside of that, how does your team practice together? And, we don't have a lot of time in general these days. It's hard to, find the time for training. It's hard to find the time for, everything, working together as a team, getting on meetings as a team. So these scenarios are just intensely beneficial. They're short, they're scattered throughout the year. They're very focused on team. They help your team focus. And so it's what we need in terms of a quick training opportunity that's team-based, communication-based, and something you can build upon. The exciting thing about these really are that you can customize them quite a bit. So the full range of cyber ranges, you can, be build one exactly to mirror your environment, not with this particular one. However, other companies do that. It doesn't really make sense to do that in cyber. We all know that there's a new tool that becomes like almost critical for us to use every year. We literally buy something every year to help fix something. And so insisting that our cyber pros only learn your specific environment almost prohibits their learning ability. What you really want is a simulation that is near to it, because they get more of that problem solving experience and it frees them up for future developments. We don't want them to just know this one SIM or this one firewall. We really want them to have a varied experience. The good news is QuickStart can get pretty close, right? So it's not like they're going to be wandering around in Azure if you really want AWS or something to that effect. But at the same time, it's going to give your team the flexibility to really flex those creative problem solving skills, and not limit them to just focused on, their exact environment, which quite honestly, a new attack can come and that problem solving skills aren't there. So we really want that to be as close as possible, but still different. Kind of continuing on, a couple more things. We certainly talked about the strengthening of the team collaboration. Again, this can be like, if Slack gets compromised, don't send a Slack message. It's really, can be some straightforward things that happen during a breach that really this testing helps you put your team in the mindset of defense and protect. It 100% improves speed and accuracy of incident responses. So when an incident happens, there's a lot of what's happening. Is that someone else's problem? Is this my problem? Who else is going to handle this? And it prepares people and your team for being able to be like, okay, I got this. I'm going to go and look at this. I'm going to communicate on this, right? It's impossible to train that from a book. There can be steps to take, but when it really comes into play, it's who's going to execute it and how are we going to work together to resolve this quickly. So that is a huge benefit to this practice simulation and to cyber ranges. It's also going to identify skill gaps, which is amazing because it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to understand where the skill gaps are on your team. The knowledge can hide the execution. And this is not to, and this is only to help people get better, right? You go through the cyber range and you're going to get a report at the end that says, your team is great at X, Y, and Z, and we need to improve on this. So identifying a skills gap overall for your team specifically is something that no one else offers. And this is imperative, I think, for moving forward. Now that we acknowledge that cyber is a team sport, it does require people working together. So we should really assess them based on their team strength. Um, it's gonna make your bosses happy. There's less risk, there's less compliance exposure. I think that's all we talk about these days is compliance. And it is a way to measure. It is a way to hold businesses accountable. But we all know it doesn't necessarily mean we're secure, right? So it reduces that and it proves that you can show your leadership, you can show other teams that you have put your team in the best position possible to reduce risk. Um, Again, I mentioned this before, but the technical tabletops are they're not explicitly required for many compliance frameworks, but it's implicitly required. Almost everyone does them. And of course, there's the executive tabletops, there's the leadership tabletops, but the technical ones really matter. Certainly I love the tabletops where it's like, okay, we have ransomware. They want $100 million. What do we do? That's an executive tabletop question. Who do we call? Do we call the FBI? Do we call our insurance company? That's a really good scenario. I also think a lot of that starts at the very, very bottom with the technical team. Did we detect the ransomware? What's going on? And that's where, you can really start to shore up the basics. Make sure your team is executing the playbook and then edit your playbook every year, like we're supposed to. And then make sure it's very realistic, make sure it's very actionable. Um, and lastly, the reporting and analytics. Every CISO struggles with this. Every IT leader struggles with this. How do we prove our ROI? How do we prove we're ready? How do we prove all of these things? I love it. Boards ask, how many breaches did we prevent? Unknown, a million every day. Like that's an impossible question for us to answer. So this really provides you with something measurable, which is what everyone wants, and it gives you something that you can show your leadership team. Um, Again, I mentioned this, it's going to refine your incident playbook, which is great. It's hard updating those every year. It becomes tedious. This makes it really easy, and you'll just, see what happened, what worked, what didn't work, and your team can reflect on that. It's going to align with real world frameworks, ISO, NIST. We all strive to achieve those. So that's critical. Again, it's going to have your tools in the system. So it's very authentic. It's very realistic. And it's a lot of documentation. You can use this in your audits. So your auditing firm would love this. They would love to see that this is what you're doing, mapping this to your controls. And again, it's just repeatable but customizable. So you don't have to have a breach attack 4 times a year. You can change it up, give them different things to focus on, and really improve that skills development. So we've talked about this quite a bit, but this is a case study from a pretty large World Bank. So they're in the financial sector. Security breaches can't happen, right? Like it's not a problem. And what they really needed, they realized is one, they had no idea where their current skills were. So they used the cyber ranges to assess where their current skills were, but also provide a collaboration, right? And this is where it becomes super critical is what's emerging, right? That's what cyber ranges can help you stay on top of. Everyone's talking about it. The AI attacks are super fast, they're vicious. And how do we train our teams to be AI breach ready? this is going to help them. It's going to help strengthen their, you know, muscle memory, their reactions, as opposed to a textbook or, you know, just online training alone that might be outdated. We can get this in play. It will be, you know, something you can practice against. Um, you know, it will definitely help you also, and this was a solution that also came out of this case study, is career growth, right? Which is something that you might not be focused on right now as a priority because you're focused on protecting your company, but keeping your team locked in, keeping your team in your company and helping them develop their career is critical. And something like a cyber range is going to help a SOC analyst go to a threat hunter. And that's exactly what this customer saw is they were able to train upskill their existing security practitioners and help them retain them longer. At the same time, giving them all that protection, that is your top priority, right? Like protect the company, protect all of our assets. Um, but at the same time, it gave them a clear path to help them develop skills. So, you know, there was a lot of metrics that went into that. But again, across the board, what this company experienced specifically was they were large, they're global. How do they unify? How do they get everyone on the same page? And this was the solution. And I can't think of a better one, honestly. All right, so winding them down a bit here, it's the who and the how. So who should use cyber ranges? Um, I think CISOs and security leaders definitely could use it. It really helps you understand what risk you're facing and helps you reduce risk. It can definitely look good to leadership. Mostly it's used for SOC and IR teams. So hands-on practice. Now, at the same time, again, my favorite way to use it is IT teams for upscaling. There's a huge problem with people entering the cyber market. There's a huge problem with being able to hire for the cyber market. So take your trusted team members and upskill them for readiness. That's the best. And then again, it helps you pass audits. It definitely helps you um, tick off a bunch of controls and many different frameworks, which is just going to make your life easier. And you're using your training dollars to do it, as opposed to taking time to schedule a meeting to do a tabletop exercise. Um, you know, this is twofold. You're training and you're doing the tabletop. So that's awesome. Um, there's a lot of flexible delivery options. If you want to schedule a meeting to discuss those more, we certainly can. But it's very helpful on every basis, cloud-based, team-based, enterprise. You do need about 5 members to execute this well. So drop 5 people into a range and see what happens. There's also a lot of individual training that comes with the cyber ranges. So again, it may be you observe certain things happening. We need extra training on X, Y, and Z. That's where it really helps on the individual basis. So yeah, that's wrapping it up. I would say that there's probably a lot of questions about what this looks like, when you get in there. And that's something certainly we have demo videos for, and we would be happy to show you. It is, a great way to understand what you can do, what different levels of your team can execute with, and we can get it tailored so that your experience is a business enabler, training dollars as a business enabler with at the end of the day we can point to metrics and say we're better now than we were last time, and that's really what's so critical about training these days. And I think that's it.
Hey, Lana, thank you for that. I've got some questions, and I'm sure
Perfect.
people that are on the call have some questions as well. And you've touched on, some of these things already, but I want to double click into those.
Love it.
If I'm a cyber leader and I'm thinking about sending my people to training, I can send people to, traditional courses, right? And those could be several days, a full week. It could be a multi-week boot camp.
Yeah.
What is the time out of office that I would need to expect and anticipate for any of my team members?
One day max, maybe a half day. And that's really, it really, we talk to so many leaders that are just, they don't have the bandwidth for that anymore, right? We don't have the bandwidth to let our team be gone for a whole week around someone else's schedule. So Cyber Ranges definitely comes with e-learning, take it or leave it, but it's at your own pace. So if someone on your team really wants to over prepare, they can, but technically drop them in the range and it's a half day. And that's what a lot of people want. Like they want that, just like, let's baseline it. Let's see what's going on here and then grow from there, which I think is very practical. So, again, your team probably has all that. They have that week-long training. Let's see what happened with it and let's test it out and then go from there.
So the follow-up to that is, you mentioned dropping people into a cyber range. Is there and I'm wearing my traditional training hat on. Is there a subject or a course of a cyber range that I send people to? Is this purely situational? Is this led by a facilitator? Like
Yeah,
like what kind of situations can I curate, or is it a menu where I have to go select from?
great question. So, we're going to set you up, right? We're going to set your team up with some preamble of training. We're going to give you we're not going to give you the keys to the castle. We're not going to show you everything, but you'll have some training going into it. And then once the day comes for us to do the cyber range, we would have taken what your feedback is, what you think your team needs, and created that environment for them. After that, based on what's the feedback is off the ratings, off the scoring, we'll provide additional training. We'll say, great, so your team wasn't great at alert triaging. So this is something we should focus on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so it's giving me another question here.
Yeah.
You mentioned, upskilling.
Yeah.
I could have a junior person as well as a senior person on my team and
Right.
many, many people in between. Can everyone do this together, or do people need to be broken up kind of based on seniority and skill set?
Everyone, you can do either, right? I think everyone should do it together. And again, to go back to, I didn't fully answer the previous question. These environments can be proctored, or there's always this AI tutor in there that can help. But when it comes to upskilling and when it comes to these exercises, I really believe in all ranges being in there together so that the more junior people are learning from the senior people, and that the senior people are learning how to collaborate with someone who might not know as much as them, which isn't always easy. I know that. At the same time, yeah, we could push all the senior members into it, and see how fast they do it. But when it comes to upskilling and really looking at your team as a team and not individuals, I think it's all levels personally. I think that's going to get the most bang for your buck when it comes to teamwork, team happiness, all of those things.
All right. And last question for me here. Yeah, earlier today, you and I were talking about how some universities are building out their own cyber ranges.
Yeah.
This may or may not be a novel idea or product, but it doesn't seem like it's too, wild. And where in the world did this come from? It just seems like it's a natural evolution of what the industry needs. Why don't most companies, or why don't all companies, build out their own cyber ranges and have this as an in-house solution?
Because it's way too expensive. It's so expensive. And to your point, this has existed. And the reason it's existed is for junior members, right? It's existed to teach people cybersecurity. It hasn't really existed to test teams, right? It's helped them learn, it's helped them get an insight, but it hasn't been learned as a measurable, quantifiable thing in business. Um, and going back to the point, it's super expensive. It's super expensive to build these, you know. There are plenty of firms out there that charge 100 grand to do a simulation for large teams, and that's just not feasible for 90% of the companies, you know. So I think universities have been doing it, some have been doing, but it's mostly for educating, getting people into cyber, not testing. Are you ready with my company? And oh yeah, my company requires me to do training, so why wouldn't I want to come out of that with some sort of measurable aspect?
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Anyone else online have any questions for Lana? I'll give people a few minutes to, or a few seconds to get off mute or type into their chat. Meanwhile, though, what we will do is we have recorded this. We will send out a recording of this presentation. You'll get a copy of the slide deck, and we'll also send you a video of one of our cyber range environments as well. That way you can share that with your team. And we are pretty much right at 30 minutes here. Going once, going twice. Alrighty, thank you everyone. Have a wonderful day. We appreciate you giving us your time, and we'll be following up with you shortly here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. Bye, y'all.
Thanks, Lana.